full of outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. I think we're going to start with some advertisements. So this show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. And you can use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Teaching how-tos. Have you heard of teaching how-tos? Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now it's reality with the Teaching How-tos platform. This highly personalized social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques. Interested to find out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for the next webinar. Reading Solutions. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The 3-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive recordings for free at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk. Apps for Good. Apps for Good gives schools free introductory computing courses. The courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create a prototype app for good. Visit www.appsforgood.org to find out more.
Hello. We're
Hannah.
taking over. I feel like we're like snuck in behind the scenes and we're just keeping the seats warm.
Hannah, the cats are away and the mice will play.
Hopefully they'll still have a show next week afterwards.
Well, you see, I did wonder, should we be disruptors? You know, when parents go, you know, should we have parties and change the show? And I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, how are you? What's this week been like?
My week is mental. It's enrichment week, so full on. We've got I've got kind of 20 kids all day, every day, for the whole entire week, which is just exhausting, but also lovely. And kind of the giggles and the niceness that is enrichment as well is lovely. But I'm ready for the summer. 2 more weeks to go.
2 more weeks to go. Yeah. I always think that must be very hard because Northern Ireland has been off since last week. School gates are closed everywhere. Teachers are off on holidays.
So I think everyone complains that we have too long, but I'm like, well, Scotland and Ireland, you have even longer than us.
We do.
So
we do. But we need it.
I think we all do. I'd love for people not in education to come and just do a year and just see how much they need that summer at the end to recharge. It's definitely needed. But
so what are we doing tonight, Hannah?
We've got some interesting topics. I feel like teacher Twitter is off again. Like I think it was the other week it went off on school trips and whether rewards and kind of house points or negatives should be included in whether they can go on trips or proms and things like that. And this week Pengate has popped up, and it's quite an interesting debate. So I'm looking forward to chatting about that one. And then we've got Schools Week's article on schools can tackle poverty and kind of what schools can do about that. And then we had, if anybody missed it, we had a 2-hour marathon politics special weekly review last Sunday. You can go back and watch all 2 hours of it if you want. And we had politicians from multiple different parties discussing their different manifestos, and we've kind of put together our Teach Talk Radio manifestos, the bits that we liked from the day that we've kind of taken away that we would like to take forward. If we put us into power, me and you could run this country. It'd be great.
We definitely could. Of course we could. Yeah. It's actually surprising how many teachers are standing in the election. You know, how many have put themselves up for election. And, you know, good luck to all of them. I hope today goes really well for them.
Yeah, because we've obviously got our very own Teach Talk Radio host. Brent is up there. My old head teachers also going for it. So it's nice to see, and I think that was actually something somebody said as well. It'd be nice to see more like nurses and doctors and teachers and people who are actually on the ground, kind of going into politics and actually making a positive change. So hopefully we'll see what happens tomorrow, and maybe things will go up. Who knows?
It'll all come out in the wash.
I'd love to have a crystal ball and see what's coming up.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be allowed to bet on
it. No. Oh dear. Obviously, Tom Bennett's been at the kind of the centre of Pengate, for those of you that haven't watched or don't know. I think he always kind of is a little bit in the controversy with things, but it was quite interesting that these are some of his tweets, and we've got some that other people did. But if a student doesn't have a pen, don't just give them a pen. Instead, you can give them a pen and take note if it happens again, follow up with consequences. Give them a purple pen so it's easy to show parents the days equipment isn't right. Teach them how to locate a pen. Teach them how to pack pen properly for the day. Privately ask if there are any reasons why they aren't ready. Record any equipment issues daily. Teach them why being organised matters. Teach them to bring 3 pens a day. Don't just give them a pen. You are not stationary Santa. Don't teach them to be helpless. Show them you care by teaching them independence. I think it went on and on as well. So later on, it was like, if you don't immediately give any child who wants a pen for free, no questions asked, every day until the end of time, then your classroom is exactly like a prison. And then somebody else said, well, like, if you're an adult in a meeting and, I forgot my pen, do you mind if I borrow one of yours? Sure, no problem. Here's a pen. And then it's like, adult at meeting breaks pen, wipes pen ink all over hand, smears on desk and chair. Can I borrow another one?
Yeah.
What do you make of all this?
Oh dear, what do I make of it all? Yeah. It's not easy. Sure, it's not, because I just think, depending on where you stand and where you kind of focus or zoom in on a child, you're right or you're wrong. Like, for example, I think there's a big difference between a P6 coming in one day and not having a pen, compared to a teenager who rarely comes with a pen. I think those are very, very different things. And I can see how, you know, Twitter gets very exercised in trying to, you know, get some kind of collegiate agreement or a set of guidelines and rules on pens and so on. It's complex, but, you know, I do think it's complex. I think, you know, no child should really suffer. Their teaching and learning shouldn't suffer because they haven't got a pen. I think if we make a big deal of it, the focus and the emphasis is on the wrong thing. We need to focus on our core business. It's teaching and learning. Now, I think your school manages pens. You have a very practical way of managing pens, Hannah.
Yeah, so, like, there's a couple of bits on here that I find quite interesting, where it says, like, if they don't have a pen, follow up with consequences and things like that. And it's like, why are we punishing kids that aren't remembering pens? Because it seems really trivial in the grand scheme of things. And it is just like if you were in the world of work and you forgot to bring a pen into work, somebody would lend you a pen, wouldn't they? And my school does. My school, they get 3 black pens, 2 purple pens, a pencil, and a ruler. And we check them every morning and shoot a time, and we restock them and we refill them. But they do get a demerit if they don't have them later in the day. So it is kind of, they should make sure that they've got them first thing in the day. So if they don't take care of them and lose them, then they do. And to be honest, it is quite nice, like in that respect, especially as an art teacher, like quite often they get to me and we don't have pencils. I can just give them out pencils. I'm not counting in and counting out pencils, kind of preciously worrying about my budget, because it's coming out the central budget, it's coming out the school's budget, as opposed to my own department's budget. It's kind of a school responsibility. They've got that. So it's nice in that respect. But then there's also the other side. The kids, I've got one in my tutor group, poor attender, but every single day will not have a pen and ask for a new pen every single day. And I'm like, what do you do with them? And he's like, I just take them out and I put them on the table when I get home. I empty my pockets and then I don't refill them and I could come in the next day. I've had another kid where I joking, I think I said I didn't have a ruler because I forgot to go get them. And he was like, oh, you can borrow one of mine, and pulled one out and accidentally spilt his whole entire blazer, which consists of 25 rulers. So there can be a bit of a game to see how many they can get from different teachers before anybody clocks that they've got that certain amount. But there is also that, like, I certainly noticed right around school, like pens like left on floors and things like that, that they're not necessarily taken as good a care of, but also they're very cheap pens because of the amount that we're giving out. But it is that, for me, it's like pupil premium students or students that are home, like it is one of those, like it's not really a big deal if they don't have one. We're going to stock them. It's not going to be an issue, but I do kind of, there is that kind of treatment and respect of things that do cost money. That
I think that becomes important later on. I think, you know, when they're more teenagers, and I understand all sides of this, all facets, I think. And we do want the broader educational responsibility, and we want them to learn how to go into work well, they don't bring pens and notebooks, but you bring your iPad, you bring your laptop. And we want them to respect. Teachers work hard, they prepare lessons. I mean, there is a train of thought that says at least children could turn up with a pen and a pencil. But I still think there's a big difference in individuals and their circumstances. And it always makes me think what's crucial here is that teachers know their children really well. They know their circumstances really well. They know the families. I always wonder, you know, sometimes a missing pen can be a missing parent. What happened in that house last night? What's it masking? What sort of things go on? And I think Paul said, we all know many adults who have forgot a pen during a staff meeting at some point. We certainly do.
Normally me.
Yeah, we certainly do. But I think, and you know, to be fair as well, I think what we saw lately on Twitter is teachers who've given out pens, and you know, they've been clever with it. They've taken the child's name, and I think there was a girl gave out 10 pens, science teacher. She got 2 back, and she was asking the children, you know, did I give you a pen? Give me it back. And unfortunately, you know, at the end of the class, she walked out, and you'll see the photograph on Twitter. The pens 8 of them are on the floor. They've clearly been broken deliberately, smashed and stood upon. She photographed it and she posted that on Twitter. And I think, you see, that just emphasizes for me, not having a pen isn't as simple always as not having a pen. Sometimes it's forgetting, sometimes it's a developmental thing, and sometimes it's really mischievous, and it is designed to wind teachers up, to be deliberately disrespectful, and, you know, to cause issues and so on.
And that's the thing with me, is for me, it's glue sticks for me. Like the way they misuse glue sticks and just quite often as well, I had an issue with them not handing them back in. I found they put the lids, and their seats were next to a radiator. They would put them down the back of the radiator because they didn't want to get up and walk and put them away. So they would try and make it look like the room was clear. Somebody joked that you need to name your glue sticks with human names and be like, "Where's Greg? Can somebody find Greg?" And like then they're more likely to come back to you, apparently. But it's also stuff like for me, like fine liners. Fine liners are very expensive pens. Posca pens are over £1 a pen. Like I want my kids to use them, but they've also got this kind of narrative that they're like, things aren't precious, and I don't think they realise the value and the cost of it. And I'm like, if you treat these how you treat your everyday pens, there's no more to come back to you once they're done. And I think that's the difference. It's kind of understanding that as well. Is that like if they're not bringing in the kids a pen, and like you said, like then it's the home life, isn't it? If there isn't a parent at home making sure they've got their homework books, making sure they've got their books for the day, making sure that they've brushed their teeth, making sure they've had a good breakfast, have they got their pens for the day, it's not setting them up on a good note for the day. So I guess we're trying to set them up on a good note so it's even keels. But it is like it is, isn't it? The kids that don't have them on a daily basis, that can't even keep hold of them, you can very much tell the kids that are genuinely asking because they've run out or lost it versus the ones that regularly don't take care of them. And we've got another message come in from Charlotte. This comes down to expectations. If everyone is provided a pen, it's their responsibility, and if they lose it or break it, they have to pay for another at the office.
I think we all know schools like that as well. And what was the comment about Santa?
Stationary Santa, yeah.
Stationary Santa, yeah. I knew there was some assonance involved. Stationary Santa, yeah. And we've all been in schools, I'm sure, where there have been, a stationery shop, maybe part of the tuck shop or beside the tuck shop. And I think we've all done things like we've had our little assemblies, and our prizes have been pencils or art supplies or pens and things like that. And those things are all very helpful. I think they are. And they teach, as you say, that care and respect for things, for tools. I really like that idea of naming your glue sticks. I think that's very good.
Well, I think it's quite interesting what you said about taking care about things or trade. Like I've had my old school that if students forgot their tie, they had to go get one, but they had to give their bus pass, and they would get a tie for the day. So therefore, they had to go give the tie back to get their bus pass. But majority of our kids were bussed in, so it depends on your circumstance. But that certainly made sure that they got returned at the end of each day. But if they break it, are they going to go to reception? Are they going to go and get a new one, or are they just going to then turn up and not have it? But then, like you said, if you get them for rewards, I've got a kid in year 9 that still has her pencil case that she got as a reward from her junior school before coming up, and she still uses the same pencil case. And I got shown it when I looked around for my son, and I was like, that's where I recognize that pencil case from. I was like, my year 9 still has it at the end of year 9. So they've had it for a good kind of 4 years and really looking after and caring for it. So I think it just depends. It's that we're very much in a nation, aren't we? Or a time where everything is fast. And everything's replaceable, everything's fast fashion, fast objects, fast belongings. Like it doesn't matter if they get rid of it, I guess.
Yeah. And funny, you reminded me of another thing too. We used to have children who would come to you and they would say, "Mr. Hazard, can you lend me a pen? Because I've got Miss Wilson after break." Now, they would never have gone to her class. I mean, I've made her up now. They wouldn't have gone to her class without a pen, but they might have gone to somebody else's class. And it's just funny, I think, we had a message there a minute ago about expectations and how some classrooms can have that sense of expectation. Oh, you dare not show up there without a pen or a pencil or equipment and so on. I think that's interesting. But there is something, I think, about classroom management and that whole business of, naming your glue, having the expectation, having an alternative. You see, it's interesting that they never forget their phones. Very rarely anyhow. So, they prioritize their phones. And we did have a system whereby, children would have to leave their phone it was almost like you lodge your phone. Certainly it was to go to the toilet, but I think we did try that with equipment for a while. If they forgot pens and equipment, their phone was lodged as a kind of a deposit, really. And they did always go back at the end of the day and pick that up.
It's exactly that, isn't it? It's quite interesting. Like that, some who's it? Somebody, engaged teacher bro too, said, "I'll lend you a pen if you lend me your shoe." I know teachers that have done shoes before. Got all the pens back that time. Catherine, obviously from Michaela's school, as a school leader, it's our responsibility to create a culture where kids always bring their pens. It is possible. And I think that as well, like they can, but it is that, like, if there's the exception, you know that kid and you know the reason why, I'm always like, oh, just this once, but I'll give you it. But I even go, keep it, and then you won't get in trouble for the rest of the thing. And then they do, they're more likely to keep hold of it and look at it, rather than being like, I'll give it to you, but you must give it back, and you still need one for tomorrow. And some kids don't have that home life to be able to get them. But I know what you meant about kind of kids coming to or asking. I remember my old school, I remember having 3 or 4 year 11s coming to me going, we've got our exam and we haven't got our equipment. Can you get us this, this and this? Because they don't want to go and tell other people and get told off, even though nobody will tell them off at that point, like the day of their exams. So I was like running around and finding them stuff, all the mocks and stuff. And they're like, we're not prepared. We haven't got it. It's like, there's going to be lots of people prepared. But actually it shows your initiative to go and try and fix the solution before going into the exam, as opposed to just going in and be like, I don't have it. At least I'd much rather they came and asked and tried to fix it themselves. I think that is also a step of growth. We've also got
as well. We want to try and avoid, that situation where there is maybe a climate of fear, where if you forget your equipment and you're one of those people who's had that pencil case for years and years. You always have your highlighters, your pencils, your rulers, your sharpeners. You're really well equipped. But one day you happen for some reason to forget it. But the school has quite a rigid kind of response to that. That can cause a lot of unease and maybe even fear among some pupils. And I think we want to avoid. I think we can teach responsibility without doing it through that kind of fear or that bartering or that exchange type of thing. And I think responsibility is a goal here. And I think if you look at the kind of the balance of tweets that there are, a lot of people kind of move quite quickly from, the practical loss of the pen into, this is more than just the pen. This is about teaching personal responsibility. It's about growth. It's about looking after things. I think that's reasonable. I think it's reasonable to expect children to come to school and to look after their equipment and so on.
I also think, like, is it that we're losing something? Because my favourite thing was going to Woolworths and showing my age, the fact that Woolworths doesn't exist anymore, but going to Woolworths with my mum, selecting all of my exciting new stationery, my new pencil case for the year. Like, that was a really exciting thing for me. And then I cherished it and I looked after it, and I was excited to get the funky coloured pens and whatnot. But it's like there doesn't seem to be that excitement anymore for that kind of to owning that stationery and having that kind of ownership over something. It's just like the thought that kids are coming to secondary school with kind of old, especially that kind of jump from primary to secondary. I'm certainly seeing more in the last few years of kids coming up with the same pencil case and the same. No, they haven't opened that since the end of last year. There's still broken pens and broken pencil case pens in there. Yeah. But it's like, especially the start of secondary school, it should be this exciting time to get new equipment.
Yeah, I do remember those times. I suppose I don't really know here either in Northern Ireland whether that has lessened or whatever. I suspect it has. And I know that will probably feed into our second story later this evening. We probably need viewers and listeners to contact us and let us know what their experience is of children and parents getting excited about, buying all that new equipment and so on. But, cost of living crisis and so on is bound to have an impact on that. I would have thought so.
I mean, Tom Sherrington's weighed in on this, and he says it's much more than that. He said, when I see folks suggest that they just give them a pen, just let them go to prom, just let them go on the school trip, projecting moral high grounds, I assume that their context is such that they never felt necessary to draw those lines. Meanwhile, elsewhere, it just is. But I think it's like you said, there needs to be the context behind it. It is just give them a pen, but it depends. If that's that kid that always has their equipment and they've just had a bad morning, something's gone on at home and they haven't bought it, just give them a pen. If they're at home and they're a young carer and they've got to like sort their parents out and then, or their brothers and sisters, and get themselves to school, and it's been like the fact that they turned up is a miracle, just give them a pen. If they're a low attainer and they've come in late because they can't get themselves out of bed and they've got real mental health issues, them coming in and being like, why have you not got a pen? It's just give them a pen. So I can see both sides, that we need to have this high ground, but there's always an exception to the rule. And I think that's where it becomes blurry, because it's like, oh, why is that kid getting a pen and not me? And it's and also some of them, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. They might, it's not always the ones that you think it is. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
That stands out for me a lot, Hannah. You know, that when is an absent pen an absent parent? You know, what's going on behind the missing pen? Because I'm pretty sure in most cases there will be something that's going on. And I do think that needs addressed. Sometimes, you know, look, children will always be children. They go through developmental stages. They forget everything. They go through phases of forgetting absolutely everything, and that does happen. And I think we need to be understanding. We need to be empathic about that as well. But we do also know that, you know, it can get contemptuous. It can be deliberate. It can be about winding teachers up. And I suppose that leads me to wonder, is Twitter the forum for kind of addressing this kind of issue? There are too many points of view, and you know, everything is too unique and too dependent on subjective point of view, a particular child, a particular room, how often it happens, particular teachers. I just don't know that Twitter is the place to have those kinds of arguments. You know? Now, you know, don't get me wrong, it's the end of the year, teachers are tired, they're shattered, they're frustrated. There is a little bit of it is fun. There's a little bit of it is letting off steam. And there, you know, we've both smiled this evening. There've been some very enjoyable tweets. But I'm pretty sure I saw last night there were a couple of people who have been blocked, and there were suggestions, you know, that I think I saw one or two suggestions that certain people should be cancelled. And I kind of think, okay, that's gone too far. Definitely too far on Twitter.
That's the thing. It depends on your school and your circumstances and your kids. But I do find interesting. Educator said teachers are left high and dry trying to maintain it. Every conference I've been to supplies pens to the high standard argument doesn't hold water. If school supplied pens as standards, this wouldn't be an issue. So I found that quite interesting, because ironically, every time I go to a course and there's pens, before I was at my school, I would take all the pens. If there was any pens left on that table, I would take them so that I had spares to give to kids, because I do like sneaking them. I don't want them to get in trouble, especially my tutor group. I'm like, right, now you're not going to get a demerit for the rest of the week. If I've given you one on a Monday, you are going to not be all right for the rest of the week. And but it is that, it's that hot thing. It's how to teach. As long as teachers aren't doing it out their own pocket, it's interesting, isn't it?
One of the things I wonder is, you know, we all go, we're all voting today, and you have to bring your license or your passport or whatever, but you don't have to bring a pen. And no. I'm wondering, should we get somebody to go around and you kind of screw a pen to the desk with a bit of cord on it? So there must
be some way to like almost put something in schools. Or even like, if I'm a big advocate, I think we should all write in pencil instead of pen anyway. But like, have one of those things where they make recycled pencils out of something. Have every school have some kind of machine that recycles stuff that the school produces waste-wise, and recycle it and make your own pencils and give those to the kids. And there you go. I've solved all problems. This is why you should vote for me.
Or what about an amnesty on pencils? I have a drawer over here in the kitchen. There must be 30, 40, 50 in it. And I probably have a drawer down another room and then, you know, another 30 or 40. Schools could have an amnesty on pens, pencils, and equipment, and it could all be left in. It would help clear out a few drawers in homes and so on. That might be worth looking at. Oh, parents groups could invest in supplying equipment.
Yeah, having like a pen box where like
Yeah.
staff and kids, any cleaners, anyone pens that are found around school get put in that box, and then if you haven't got your equipment, you can just go help yourself out of that box. That's
Yeah.
quite an interesting way.
Have you seen that comment from Adriana there? What about claiming, forgetting, losing notebooks, not just pens, and missing school when assessments are done? I'm not sure about the second bit, but I do know, you know, in the school I taught, it used to frustrate the life out of, particularly for some reason, the maths department, when children wouldn't turn up for maths exams with pens, pencils, protractors, calculators, and you always knew there was a maths exam on when the department were carrying up these big trays of calculators and all sorts of protractors, rulers, and everything. And, you know, they would be given out, you know, diligently and collected at the end. And I knew that was very stressful always for the maths department. Yeah.
I know I find it stressful when they don't bring their books in, because especially with art, when we're developing a work, like I plan lessons to work back into drawings that they've done, and then they don't bring their books. I think because we only had their lesson once, 1 hour a week, they're not in that routine of bringing it in like they are their other subjects. So I since COVID, I've got into the habit of kind of keeping their books and not letting them take them home. And I'll give them homework on separate pieces of paper, because then I'm more likely to keep their books and they're not going to lose them. I've got hold of them. I know what they're doing. I'm very much a reflective practitioner. I like to look at what they've done in their books and see and adapt my lessons appropriately. But I do find it that, like, changing schools where the kids all took them home, I've literally got kind of 5 kids a lesson not bringing in their books. So I just stopped them taking them home. But they'll still try and sneak them in. I'm like, no, make sure I've got them.
Yeah.
And it is that kind of like, I'll hold out for a couple of weeks in the hope that they'll try and remember to bring them in. And then it's like, still can't find it. So then I end up giving them a new book, and then they'll lose that book. And it is that there's certainly a lack of organization creeping into these kids. But I think it is that, again, like, I mean, me and Adam spoke the other week about social media and phones. I think a lot of these will be doom scrolling in the morning. They'll wake up, they go on their phone, they scroll through their phone, and suddenly they're like, oh no, I need to go to school. And they're not in that kind of present state where they get up in the mornings and they organize themselves and have I got this? Have I got this? I've just got to have my breakfast, get my books ready, and go. I think they're just in this constant state of distraction when they're not in school lessons, which I think is interesting. I think it's going to get worse. I think they're going to keep forgetting.
Yeah. I know it doesn't look like it, Hannah, but I actually do predate mobile phones. But and I can tell you, in the 60s and 70s, there were plenty of pens, pencils, and books that were forgotten as well. But I do agree, and I take the point. You know, the mobile phones do cause a lot of distraction. And yeah, I just have an image of, you know, the busy family and, you know, mums and dads trying to get everybody out, and these children are all on their devices, and their attention is somewhere else, and it's not on, you know, their books, their bags, and so on. We were what we call an iPad school when I left. So, you know, the need for books and pencils was a lot less for quite a few years. And yeah, you would have had the odd child who forgot their iPad, but it would have been quite rare. Now, we did have games and things blocked, so it wasn't that they were you know, playing games. Social media was blocked. They really were used for, you know, for academic purposes, and that, you know, that worked quite well. They did bring in their work. We would have had a few children who, you know, for various reasons, they lodged their iPad in the office at the end of the day and picked it up the next morning. But that might have been for other, it wasn't because they were going to forget it or anything.
But it's been an interesting debate. I'm just going to play our lovely video from our sponsors so you guys can see a little bit more about them, and then we'll move on to our next topic.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Have you ever heard of teaching how-tos? Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now it's a reality with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised, socialised platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively, or with their peers, or with their new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for their next webinar. Are you looking for the best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The 3-day conference explores a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and all key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk. Apps for Good gives schools free introductory computing courses. The courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create a prototype app for good. Visit www.appsforgood.org to find out more.
Fab. And our next news story is kind of by Schools Week. They did this article on schools can tackle poverty, but not alone and not this way. Paul, you picked this one out. What made this stand up for you?
I think the title just struck me, and the photograph that went with it. Now, there's perhaps a particular reason for that. Very recently, my wife and I watched the brilliant and classic film Kes. I don't know if you know it, Hannah, but super film. Oh, you should really watch it. Fantastic film, yeah. And there was just something about, the poverty and what education is about, and that kind of holistic learning. And there's something just about the shoes, the torn shoes, the poverty, and the little boy in the film. And I began to wonder just, what's this article going to be about? Schools can tackle poverty. And I think absolutely, let's do it if we can. But there's a part of me thinks, oh my goodness, we have a huge, burgeoning, bursting curriculum. Is this something else that we have to do? Is this going to be foisted upon us? But I think when you read the article, you can see that, John has, some very good, very strong points to make. And I think, clever guy. I think his timing is very right. It's the eve of or 2 days before the election that this article came out, and it carries very strong messages to the incoming government. And really, the main message is that they will have to address and eradicate poverty before standards in education rise. Before the economy begins to improve, all the big meta things that education is about and brings about, and that really this will have to happen through policy, really through joined up policy, and policy that really focuses on people, a policy that's compassionate, that's well structured, and that schools and education are just one very integral part of how the whole issue of poverty will be, hopefully it will be solved. That's probably not the answer you were expecting when you asked me what.
No. I find it very interesting. I just think it's one of those, isn't it? It's very much like, oh, schools will solve it kind of thing. Like, it does seem to be that with everything. Schools will solve mental health. Schools will solve knife crime. Schools will solve toxic masculinity. Like schools will solve it all, and I do get it. And I think I read something. I don't know whether it was Garden. I can't remember where I read it, but apparently there's now more food banks now than there are like McDonald's, and yet before there was kind of a tenth of the amount of food banks as what we've got now, in just a 15-year gap, and it should be going the other way, really. We're kind of one of the top countries in terms of development, and yet we've got this kind of big issue, and it is that it's all kind of gone a bit mad over the last kind of few years. I personally have felt it, so I can't possibly believe like how other families have felt it. I mean, in a single income household, in my household, my mortgage went up by over £1,000 a month, and trying to suddenly find that from somewhere was just almost impossible. And it's just been really difficult. And I've openly used at my son's school, used their clothing bank when my son changed schools. And my ex-husband was conscious of the fact that he was going to have a different colour uniform and didn't want him to stick out, because they were like, he can still wear his other uniform because there's only half a year left. We don't mind if he wears the other uniform. I was like, well, but he's worried about him being bullied because he'll look different. I was like, but I physically can't afford to buy another set of school uniform. And they gave him a couple of jumpers, so he did stick in. And I was like, when he did grow out of his clothes, I did buy the next set, but it was like I couldn't afford to just do it, having just bought a set. And especially at the rate that they grow, and boys and shoes, my son seems to use his shoes to stop him on his scooter as opposed to the actual brakes. I do go through a pair of shoes like a term, which drives me absolutely insane at the rate he grows and goes through the toes. But like, and I think I'm like to think of myself as quite looked after and quite well, and I budget and I do well, but I'm like, I don't have that kind of education in how to do it. So I think there's different ways in this, and the fact that schools do need to end child poverty in terms of supporting those families through it, making sure they're really using pupil premium money effectively to make sure that these children are given the correct opportunities. But also, I do think there needs to be more financial literacy within schools, and kind of teaching kids about how to finance, how credit cards work, how debt works, how mortgages work, and really understanding these things and how they can make a difference. It's one of those. I think there's a lot that needs to be changed in terms of education that could tackle this. I don't know. I mean, we've got a few comments as well. Adriana says schools should try building strong community support systems, sharing resources, clothing, supplies, foods and services. I certainly know, like my son's primary school, like whenever he grows out a coat, I go and donate it, because I think coats as well, kids grow out of them, they're so expensive. And it's just, but yeah. And then she's also put this one, that schools don't get much funding, teachers are helping financially here and there. I think it is that I do, if like I couldn't, my budget was spent and I wanted to do something really nice for my students, so I went and bought the equipment to do it, because I was like, I don't want to do something really boring with them. I want to do the exciting thing. It'll cost me 30, 40 quid, but I'll go get that, and I'll go do that, because actually my kids are going to really benefit from that. And they did. I love the fact that even though I went and spent my own money, I had a kid go, this is the best lesson I've ever had. And it's one of those, it's a half-term project, so it's not like it's a quick one-off, so that I'm investing in the whole term. But teaching is really bizarre, because you just want to give. But also it's like, but where is this coming from? Because it's mainly coming from the teachers, isn't it?
Yeah, well, a lot of it certainly is. Yeah, a lot of it definitely is. Yeah. I can't get over the image. My mother used to always say when I was a child, they couldn't keep me in shoes. And it was that football, bicycles, use them as your brakes or whatever, or trying to copy George Best or anything like that. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right in everything you say, Hannah. And a lot of it will come down to what we talked about earlier. And that is the point in the classroom where the child needs a pencil, and maybe teachers do, invest in boxes of pens, and it is with their own money very often. I think the article that we chose this evening I think it's making a bigger point, and it's making a bigger point about whether education is actually effective in addressing poverty. And, one of the lines that John uses is he talks about the illusion of meritocracy. And, that education, from the untrained eye, looking from the outside in, it looks like, if you work hard and you do well and you pass exams, that is your ticket, and that's your ticket to a better future and so on. But I think, those of us who are on the inside and have worked through the system and seen children come through will recognize that the system and its structures and the way it's built isn't always a level playing field. And I mean, children are very different. Children come into the system at different starting points. They're able to go and accelerate through in different paces. Not all children are the same. And I don't know if you know that drawing. It's like a black and white cartoon drawing where I think the animals are lined up in the jungle, and Einstein, I think it is sitting at the table, and he asks the animals to climb the tree. But you have a fish there, now the monkey obviously will be able to climb the tree and so on, but the fish really would find that very difficult. And we all know children, who are like that. They do start, from a disadvantage, and the system is kind of almost against them from the beginning. And that's why, I think we need things like early years, early identification, money going into early years, greater support, because those early starts are a good foundation to build upon.
And I think it's quite interesting. We kind of touched it a little bit on Sunday in our politics special, but in the article, he talks about the experience of primary heads is very different to a trust of a CEO, that's different to a special school leader, and that everybody's got kind of a different experience. And I think that's quite interesting in education, is that it can be very different depending on where you are, like a bit of a postcode lottery of kind of what school you're at, how they're kind of diversifying the money and things like that. And especially like the digital poverty that we talked about that briefly. And I know a couple of our sponsors are really kind of avid in trying to help that and getting kids devices or teaching them how to use them properly. But it depends very much on what school and what trust you're in as to what tech you've got and how tech savvy you are and how good their digital literacy is. And I think as kids go off into the wider world, that is going to be a massive thing. If they're able to type and present a good CV and be able to write a good personal statement, that is going to be a massive difference to somebody that can't really type and isn't really used to using computers or doesn't know where to search for jobs and things like that. And
even ahead of that, Hannah, I think you have to actually see that that's important.
Yeah.
You have to actually realize that the ability to do those things is important, and that's not always easy. In that article, John gives a very good description of the impact of poverty. I think it's very worthwhile for every teacher to read that. He talks about if your focus is on survival, then school very definitely takes a back seat. And I think we know that. But as you talk about the postcode lottery, someone else living in a different part of town who goes on holiday to St. Moritz and skis and so on. I mean, I used to talk about they will have a very different view of French as a subject to study compared to somebody who, from their perspective, feels, well, I'll never go to France, and there's no point, it's pointless. And I do think he makes the case that the system, the structures, they need to change, and that there needs to be a huge amount of state intervention, and that we need systemic, connected response across policies and so on.
And I completely agree. Like, I know before COVID happened, that culture capital was becoming this new buzzword. I think it was been sprinkled in the Ofsted framework, and suddenly everyone's like, what is this? What is this? And it is that kind of concept of the kids that are at home being taken to theatres and taken to shows, or having conversations about the news and reading, the parents who read the papers and are discussing articles in it over dinner are going to do much better at their GCSEs and their exams and have more worldly experience, be able to hold conversation. Again, linking back to that oracy, which is a buzzword at the start of the year, but seems to have died down a little bit now. But actually, I'm quite a big fan of that. And it's that cultural understanding, having those conversations about different things and understanding the diversity. And I think if children can understand the complex diversity and how the system works and how they win it, it's quite an interesting one. I know for me and my school, like, I love kind of the disciplinary knowledge and kind of flipping that learning and getting them to really think about it. Like in art, we talk about Damien Hirst, who'll like paint one dot and that's it, and sell his paintings for millions because he's controversial and gets attention, versus Jason DeCarius Taylor, who does underwater sculptures and is in the 100 times most influential people, and art for good versus art for money, and that kind of concept. And I think the more we can expose our students to the world and everything that's going on around them, the more rounded children they're going to become, and more worldly. It's that kind of street smart thing, isn't it? If they can understand how things work, then you can beat the system. If you think, oh, well, I'm only going to get this, I'm only going to get that, this is the kind of job I'm going to get, and there's no aspirations, then that's what they'll fulfill, because they don't manifest that higher expectation. So I think that kind of opportunity to be exposed to different experiences is really important as well. And I think that's dropped off with COVID, because, and especially with the funding, because schools don't have that spare cash to set up that trip or do this or do that. And it is those things that those children are unfortunately kind of missing out on, I think.
I think you make a great point there. I mean, you know, that article is very much about, you know, the systems and the structures, but when it comes down to us in the classroom, you know, very much at the cold face, yes, I think that whole business of trying to instill aspiration and self-belief and breadth of experiences, I think, you know, allowing children to see the possibility that they can become something. And that for me is all about good teaching, good learning, you know, a sense of social justice, good leadership, really valuing that individual, excellent, you know, pastoral care and so on. I was in a school recently, and it would be a school, you know, in a deprived area, and the principal was taking me around the school, and we looked at some paintings that the children had done. It would be P7 here, which would be P6, I think, in England, and it was very interesting. They were paintings of what the children thought they would be when they grew up, you know, what their aspirations are. Now, clearly, you know, the school had done a huge amount. This was like a big project, cross-curricular. It wasn't just we'll paint this one day. But I thought that was a fantastic way, using imagination to help allow children to get into the mindset that they maybe could be a fireman, they maybe could be a nurse, they could be an accountant, they could be a doctor. Because the area they come from, that just doesn't exist. That kind of aspiration to have that kind of ambition just isn't there. And I'll finish really quickly. I don't know if you've ever watched, what's the film show tonight? I don't know if you've ever watched the film. It's Mr. Deeds. Have you ever seen Mr. Deeds?
No, I don't think I've seen that either. I do watch lots of films, I promise.
Not really, no. But there's a point in the film Mr. Deeds where very quickly, there's a big town hall meeting in America, and oh gosh, I can't remember the actor who plays him, but anyhow, he has to stand up and he's talking about what's important in life. And he kind of asks the audience who doesn't have that little child in them that at one stage dreamt of being, you know, a fireman and this, that, and the other and all. I think that's very important. We can fire children's imaginations. We can help, you know, instill and raise ambitions, and then we fill it in with kind of good teaching, good learning, good pastoral care. I think we do We do children, we do individuals, we do communities, and we will end up doing the country an enormous service.
I think it's exactly down to that. If we want to solve child poverty, we need to invest in education. We need to make sure that schools should be absolutely flourishing and having all this extra money to really support these children and really encourage them and enhance their learning. And then we're breaking the cycle, aren't we? Rather than fighting fires, we need to flourish and kind of create that next generation where these actually are really confident children that feel like possibilities are endless. Like, it'd be a completely different scenario.
Hannah, we've probably, well, I say we, it's probably me has talked too much on that.
So right, this is how we're going to change the world with our manifesto. But yeah, so if you missed our amazing, if you've enjoyed listening to me and Paul, we and many of our hosts, and if you thought we talked a lot, wait till you hear the politicians that we had on Sunday. They could definitely talk 2 hours worth. So if you missed any of it and want to go back and listen to it, it's available to go watch or listen to. But that was quite an insight, wasn't it? And these were some of the things that we felt as hosts were kind of the most important things that we would want to change in education.
And do you see, Hannah, the one that's in the centre of the top row there, a return of Sure Start centres, better support before starting school? You see, I think that's vital and fits in very much with what we've just been talking about. And that whole sense of, you know, changing the community, effective, cold-face change in that community to try and level out that kind of playing field, which then, you know, school can address through social justice, through instilling ambition, and it's that kind of wraparound care that you described there a moment ago. Yeah,
I think there's so much that support as well. It's community, isn't it? Because the Sure Start centres are little things, little places in communities where, like, parents can go that are struggling. Like, I know I went to one when my son was born, and they had free signing classes, and my son was deaf, and I wouldn't have been able to afford that, and I could learn to do that. But they always had food banks outside, and that was kind of my first experience of them. Like, I'd never really seen them before, but I saw plenty of people using them. And actually, as a mother on maternity leave, when suddenly your wages have completely disappeared, and you get to that scary point where you're not ready to go back to work, but you're kind of being forced to because there's no money. But actually, those little things that, I can take that and I can actually get a couple of meals out of that, and that can make a difference. And it is those little things that kind of make a difference. And I double as a food teacher, and I was going through a lot of our questions on the practice exam papers are all about food poverty and things like that, and learning that there's apps that they can go and buy leftovers from the supermarkets or from the coffee shops that will sell like a whole bag of kind of leftovers on the cheap. That's what people can go and do. And it's, as well as these food banks, it's a shame that it's come to this. Really, we want to be supporting people. We want our kids to go to school knowing how to brush their teeth. I remember getting free toothbrushes and free like timer when I was at the Sure Start Centre. I remember getting free books to read. I remember a weekly review, gosh, quite a long time ago, talking about the statistics and number of houses that don't have books in them for kids to read. It's astonishing. But actually, the Sure Start Centres were kind of combating that. So yeah, I completely agree with, we need those back.
Yeah, I like that. 3,000 cash bonus, £3,000 cash bonus. Can we? Is that every 10 years?
I think it should be every 10 years. Like, every time you survive 10 years, you get like a little bonus for being like, stick in there. You're going to keep teachers in teaching then, aren't you?
That's 12,000 for me. Excellent. Great.
I mean, my mum retired at 73 and then went back to invigilating this year. Wow. So she would be in for the money.
Oh, yeah. Did you put forward that bottom right one? Hannah, what is that? P8 bucket?
Well, yeah, so in England we have our Progress 8, so they're basically what schools are judged on, and it's their top ones. So at the moment, like the main ones, they have to have in their English, maths, science, over geography or history in their languages, and that's kind of, therefore they're the ones that the schools care about. They don't really care about the other subjects so much because they don't count towards their core subjects. So it was kind of that idea that one of the arts or design, so art, drama, music, any of those would then come out from that being, because you could count any of them in the 8, but they'd become more into that kind of core band and become one of them more important. So, because that's the thing, that's the areas that places are cutting. That's because DT, kitchens, they're really expensive departments to run. So that's where schools are cutting a lot of their budgets to try and break even, is in that area. But actually, if it was part of it and they have to do well because the school will be judged on it, therefore they're more likely to invest in it, and it's not the place that gets the funding taken from it early doors. So that one should come in, I think, depending on who gets in tomorrow, because I know that it was a Labour pledge, and I think there was somebody else that had it as well, so or similar. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. The other ones, a lot of them, all the pledges talked about having more SEND spaces and things, but none of them actually directed anything around the SEND funding, and SEND funding hasn't changed since 2013. So I think that schools only get about £10,000 for a kid that needs a one-to-one. That's not going to cover a TA, no. I mean, they get paid pittance as it is. So the kids aren't, so therefore they're having like one TA to like 3 or 4 kids because that's what the funding will cover. But actually, it's not kind of giving that kid what they need or require. And I know EHCPs we talked on the weekly review have gone up 6 times, I think. And also the wait times, there's something crazy like 3-month wait times, but they're meant to be kind of much shorter. So just doing a disservice to our SEND kids at the moment. And I think they're getting a lot of the brunt of it. But I know the other one was, the main one was like workload. I think teachers, it seems to be this thing, like we've learnt loads in terms of technological advances since COVID, seem to have massively grown. But because all of that research and all that tech has grown, teachers' workload seems to have grown with it. But I certainly think we need to, if we're going to, otherwise teachers are going to burn out, we need to reduce it in some way.
You see, there was a lot of response on Sunday for that proposal, reduce teacher workload, even with just 1 hour a day. I thought there was a very emotional response to that in our weekly review show. It was very popular.
Because I think it's we would be better teachers if we have an hour a day to be able to assess our lessons and plan for the next day, as opposed to doing it all after school and trying to rush it around, or if you're able to do it after school. It's one of those, to have an actual hour a day to kind of relax and plan and actually make sure you've got really good lessons. The kids are only going to benefit, and they're our stakeholders really at the end of the day.
And then Christopher's idea of a jury service style Ofsted for teachers on M5 or higher.
I love this idea. I was like, why has no one come up with this before?
I think it's good. Yes. I think so. It's definitely worth investigating.
I just think I'd be really intrigued. I mean, I've worked in my previous role as national subject lead. I worked with a teacher who was very renowned. She turned around schools and been nominated for Global Teacher of the World Awards. She was an incredible woman to work for, and she was an officer and inspector for 15 years. And I would go with her around our schools in our trust and inspect them. And watching her go and seeing it behind the scenes, like I've always been on the receiving end, and I love Ofsted. Not the whole thing of it, but I'm very much, if Ofsted are there, I love pressure. I thrive in chaos. So I'm like, send them to me, because I like that kind of situation. I want to prove how all this hard work is worth it. So, and I get annoyed if people don't send them to me, because it's my opportunity, and I'd rather take that over other people as well and take the stress. But that's just me. I'm a bit weird. But like, it's that watching behind the scenes, watching her talk to the head teacher, talk to the heads of department, talk to the staff and see where they match up, and then going back and kind of quizzing them on it, talking to the kids and the different facets of it. It's so fascinating, and it really made me think about me and my leadership and where my team were, and would they all repeat the same things as me? Are we all on the same page? Are the kids getting the same thing from all the teachers, no matter where they are in the department? And it was just really interesting to see that side of it. So I do think having us teachers kind of be recruited into it would be really fascinating, and to see, for us as one point, to see it the outside. Also, we're in it, so we're going to be far more kind of understanding of other schools, and we're going to notice and spot things, and we're going to know what is everyday chaos and what is a one-off kind of scenario. And we're also going to see through the BS. We're going to see the staff member that's not regularly there, that's been shipped in to cover from the trust. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like as teachers watching other teachers or in that, you're going to know, you just have that feel, I think.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Yeah, something of the poacher turned gamekeeper maybe, and then we know the ins and outs. I was lucky enough as well to have a very similar experience to yours. Now, we don't have Ofsted in Northern Ireland. We have what we call the ETI, the Education and Training Inspectorate. Now, they do operate in very much the same way. But I think it was roughly a 3-month period. As you say, I was just shadowing a couple of inspectors. I had no say in any outcomes or anything, but I did feel very lucky and very privileged to be able to sit in some of the interviews and so on. I did learn a lot. I think I definitely did learn. And then when we had our own inspections, I'm sure there was still some of that learning there, and it counted at that time. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? I definitely think it unfortunately all stems on having loads more money, doesn't it? And I think it's the education system is a bit broken. It is not, the budget cuts are not fit for kind of what schools need to run. I think it's something like crazy, like 40% of schools will be in a deficit this year. So it's going to be an uphill battle if the government don't invest in schools. And unfortunately, with them coming in at this time of year, I don't think we're going to see them next year. I think it will be the year after if we do see any. So I think we've still got another tough year ahead. And then maybe the year after we'll see potentially some changes having more effect. But we just got to remember the kids. It's for them. We've got to keep going on the hard slog.
Well, school budgets was one of the things we were going to look at this week, but maybe we leave that for the people who are going to take over from us, Hannah. Are we the new Brent and Adam? Are we?
We are. Who do you want to be, Brent or Adam?
Well, I suppose with a Northern Irish accent, who else could I be? But nobody can do his voice or his accent. Sure, they can. It's actually quite hard to emulate, but.
I love a Brent rant. They're great. So if you've missed them, we apologise for filling in, but they should be back next week. So back to normal. But if you've enjoyed listening to us chat and you're like, I love like listening and talking about teaching, and you want to be a host, then we've got the QR code on there. Just scan that and you can apply to be a host. We've got a few spots left. So if you'd like to come and be one, or even more, if you'd just like to be a guest and come and chat about something, maybe you've got a passion or you've heard something we've talked about tonight and you're like, actually, I want to make that into a whole show, then do message in and we can sort that out for you. And same as if you are having withdrawals from Adam and Brent, you can scan the QR code there and find their previous shows, or like the last few weeks you've had the delights of me and Paul. So maybe you've can't get enough of us, you can pop back and find one of our shows from the last few weeks. And a big thank you to everyone that's messaged in. We've had Adriana, we had Paul, we've had Charlotte. So thank you so much for messaging in. It's great to have your input on these kind of shows, and it's really good to talk about those. And then also, of course, our lovely sponsors as well. We've got John Catt Educational back supporting us currently, and then we've got Teaching How To's, which again I did a show with Tom on those, so you can go back and watch about that. We've got Reading Solutions. I can't remember. I think it was it Jamie or somebody did one for them, and we've got Apps for Good, which I think Tom did as well. So if any of our sponsors you heard tonight think, oh, actually that's up my street, go and watch the show talking it through, because all your questions will be answered on there. And we've got some great John Catt book shows coming up as well, so keep your eyes open for those. And
don't forget the discount code, John Catt.
Exactly. I'm gonna try and remember it off. JCTTR2425, I believe it is. So yes,
you're right, that's it.
I've been here too long. But yeah, thanks so much, Paul. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Great talking to you, Hannah. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And yeah, we'll hopefully see you guys again soon. If you don't see us popping up on here, I'm sure we'll be on the weekly reviews on a Sunday. We can get all your news needs from there as well. And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Do indeed. Bye, everybody.